What is the trashiest thing somebody has done at your family Thanksgiving? My aunt always brought several large Tupperware containers and would begin packing up food for herself immediately after everyone had filled their plate. If you thought you might want seconds, you had to take them the first time, because there was often nothing left after she'd filled her containers. Of course, if you did that, she'd make a snide comment about how much food you were eating. I don't recall ever seeing her sit down with a plate to eat with us. She was always in the kitchen packing up the food that she hadn't paid for or prepared. Her daughter, 28 at the time, wouldn't speak to anyone and fed the shrimp hors d'oeuvres to the cats. They are no longer invited. The woman my cousin had just married stole a Costco-sized box of individually wrapped Cheez-It packages from our garage. I just happened to notice they were gone when putting food in the fridge. Asked about it publicly, and she locked up, started stuttering, and went to get them out of her car. She returned with the excuse, "I thought these were mine. I have a box just like them at home." I was at my wife's uncle's house for Thanksgiving, and his wife decided right after dinner to play their wedding video because it was also their anniversary weekend. She looks for a half hour to find the videotape, finds it and gathers the whole dinner party, 25 people, to the backroom area, plays the video, and right as she's walking down the aisle, midway down the aisle it goes fuzzy and cuts to Dale Earnhardt's funeral. Uncle Joe used that tape to record Dale Earnhardt's funeral. Granted, it was in small town Michigan, where the NASCAR track is, but still, everyone froze in complete shock and I started laughing and felt like I was in a sitcom, but it was real life. This was just a joke, but I still felt it was worth sharing. My uncle made a scene about having dropped something on the floor. When he was sure enough of us were now paying attention, he bends over to pick it up. His shirt rides up, and we see a tramp stamp tiger crawling out of his butt crack. It was a temporary tattoo that he had my aunt help him specifically put on for this occasion. Every year we had Thanksgiving at my grandparents' house. One year everyone was there but one aunt. She was outside in her car refusing to come in. Turns out she had taken out a credit card in my cousin's name. Well, said cousin was in the Navy. Cousin found out on the drive over while opening her mail. Aunt had racked up $10,000 plus debt for my cousin. Edit. Cousin did not pay. Her father made her mother pay her back using part of her retirement. Seems this was just one of the first signs my aunt was not in her right mind anymore. My cousin did not want to press charges, but was able to get her credit back up with some work after the debt was paid off by her mother. There were a couple of other things my aunt had done, but nothing like this. Unfortunately, she was literally out of her mind and only got worse. That Thanksgiving was one of the last ones where our family got together like that. My uncle, aunt and cousins never came back after that one. They did visit again at other times, but aunt was medicated and not like herself anymore. One of my mom's friends was invited to our Thanksgiving because her kids were at their SOS families for the holiday. That year, my uncle brought a bottle of homemade limoncello to share. The stuff was delicious, but it was also about 50% alcohol. Everyone was drinking it out of little 1-ounce glass cups. My mom's friend instead poured herself a full wine glass, one half the bottle, when no one was looking, downed it in 15 minutes, and then tried to go back for more. She was passed out drunk at least an hour before dinner even began. My husband's brother and his sister-in-law, who was married to his other brother, always disappeared for about 20 to 40 minutes at the same time. This happened for 4 years in a row before anyone got nosy enough to go looking for them. Sister-in-law is now married to the Thanksgiving hookup brother. Every Thanksgiving with my mother-in-law, my wife and I host. About 15 people come, and everyone brings side dishes as is the custom. Not her mother. She only brings stuff for herself. She proudly announces that whatever she brought is just for her. It's not for diet purposes, because she eats all the other food too. When dessert makes an appearance, she will make a big scene about wanting the first piece instead of letting the kids get theirs and get out of the way. One year there was a big argument about the corner pieces of a chocolate cake. She went first as usual and cut herself 2 corner pieces and took them both. If you want to make little kids cry, do that. She wouldn't give them up though. Also, she treats a guest room and bath like a hotel. When she leaves she takes the toilet paper rolls, the Kleenex box, paper towels, soap, etc. Edit, just to address some of the comments in one swoop. She's not fat, and she's not senile. She is invited every year, because my wife is the only family that she has, and my wife would feel tremendously guilty if she didn't invite her. Not much of an excuse, but that's why. And if you are horrified by the above, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I could really make your head spin with her behavior on the 364 days of the year that on Thanksgiving. An actual family fight broke out. We had to call the cops and everything. My grandpa got a fine. My uncle was arrested. My step-grandmother's oldest daughter was arrested. Before my uncle and grandpa passed away, we wouldn't let them live it down. It was glorious. When I say fight, I mean people on the floor throwing punches. We never went back to my grandpa's for Thanksgiving after that. This was when I was between 8 to 9. We actually went back 1 year and my aunt gave us all food poisoning. My mom was literally dragging my brother and I into the because how bad the food poisoning was. I have not eaten anything she has cooked since. Faked a heart attack. It was very surreal. And her husband was so embarrassed. Edit, here's what happened. Grandmother didn't like my dad very much, and she picked a fight with him, so he decided that he was going home. When grandmother M realized that my stepmom, her daughter, was going to take dad's side and go home too, she yelled a lot and then, as a last-ditch effort, dramatically clutched her chest and collapsed very carefully. It was outside, and I guess she didn't want to bump her head or muss her clothes. Dad offered to call 911. Grandfather said it wasn't necessary, and when grandmother realized no one was taking her seriously, she opened her eyes, allowed grandfather to help her up, and went inside with him while fake sobbing. Normally she was quite nice, but she had her moments and really wasn't happy that her daughter had grown up and had a life. Holidays usually brought out the worst in her, which was weird because she loved cooking and celebrating. Holy crap, my grandma did this at Christmas a couple years ago. She has been banned from Christmas ever since. We have a tradition where we always eat crepes Christmas morning. My mom and I probably spent 2 days in the kitchen making 3 different types of crepes, crepe casseroles, a whole bunch of yummy things. My grandma helped us make them, and this has been a tradition for years. Come Christmas morning and everyone comes downstairs to open presents. We are all opening presents, and someone notices my grandma is going crazy around in the kitchen. We go over to see what she's doing, and it turns out she's decided that our crepe breakfast wasn't good enough, and she threw it all out. Instead she was going to make the breakfast she wanted, lard stuffed French toast. My mom got super upset with her, and at breakfast everyone made a point to only eat the crepes we had scavenged. My grandma then proceeded to fake a heart attack because we were being so mean to her. She fell to the floor clutching her chest, screaming she couldn't breathe and someone needed to go get a sleep apnea machine so she could get oxygen. Literally everyone just pretended not to notice and kept eating breakfast. She didn't talk to anyone for the rest of her week-long stay and hasn't been allowed at family events since. Mother-in-law announces halfway through dinner that she is taking the rest of the turkey home. The turkey we bought and cooked. Before she leaves she runs to the bathroom and leaves smelling like she crapped herself. Sister-in-law goes into the bathroom and is in there forever. She comes out and asks who was in there before her. I answer, your mother. She goes, oh, that was the most disgusting thing I ever saw. Don't worry, I cleaned it up. To this day she refuses to say what she saw, but the bathroom was spotless. Pudding wars. As a child, my grandmother would make banana pudding for Thanksgiving. Homemade custard and meringue, the works. Every year my mom and her brother would outdo themselves trying to keep the other from getting the pudding. My uncle broke into our house one year to steal it. My grandma took to making decoy pudding and hiding the real stuff. But one year takes the cake. My grandma refused to make the beloved pudding. My great aunt steps in and offers to make it. Great aunt shows up. My mom takes the entire tray of pudding from her hands and runs into my grandmother's bedroom screaming at my younger cousin to get her a spoon. She locked herself into my grandmother's bedroom with every intention of eating herself sick on that banana pudding. Unfortunately, my great aunt Can't cook. The result of this was that instead of smooth, creamy custard, the pudding had bits of scrambled egg yolk in it. This happens if you try to heat the custard too fast and don't continuously stir as it's cooking. Only moments after locking herself in the room, my mom returned, disappointed, and ate her turkey in sullen silence. My uncle and grandfather don't have a good relationship, but were tolerating each other because Thanksgiving. My uncle was cooking lasagna and my grandfather decided to help, so he grated the cheese. He did this in another room, because the kitchen was full of other people cooking. We have a big Thanksgiving, maybe 15 to 20 who love to eat. I had brought in the cheese and everything was going fine. Flash forward to dinner time, the food is coming out, and as tradition dictates we always start with lasagna. My grandfather made some joke like, "I know you hate me, but at least I'm great," and crap hit the fan. My uncle literally went into a rage and was yelling at everyone because we didn't tell him he was using tainted cheese. Then said hell it and proceeded to flip the table all the food was on. Then my grandfather called him outside to settle the score, which resulted in two grown men fist fighting in the backyard, culminating with my granddad getting thrown into the pond we lived off of and slicing his leg on a jagged rock that he landed on. The rest of us ordered Chinese food and kicked my uncle out, and my grandfather refused the hospital because he had a little too much holiday joy in him at the time. Surprising, my uncle hasn't come to holidays in years now. Last year, my husband's grandma hosted Thanksgiving dinner at her house and asked us to provide the turkey, not even the trashiest part. We had to go to spend Thanksgiving with my husband's dad's side that morning, so we dropped the turkey off on our way to his dad's house. His grandma said that they would be eating at 4. We arrived back at his grandma's house around 3:45 and everyone had already eaten all the food, including the entire turkey. My brothers got into a fight. My oldest brother slept with my younger brother's new wife, who was like 20 years younger than him. They got into a fist fight and broke through the wall of their dad's trailer. The police had to be called, and that's why I stopped going to family evening. This was by no means an unusual occurrence, just the first thing that came to mind. About a decade ago, my cousin, who was a junior in high school, finally got himself a girlfriend. She didn't come to Thanksgiving, but everyone wanted to see what she looked like. So he gave us a picture and everyone had a turn looking at it, made a comment, and passed it along. Most of the men in the family were drunk, and when they got the pic, all of them would say, "Hey, she looks familiar." Then proceed to talk about the time they banged her. Of course it's all meant to be in good fun, but it's pretty classes, and this was my cousin's first girlfriend and he's not really the alpha male type to appreciate this type of ribbing. He was also the smartest in the family by far. Eventually he left the state for college, became a doctor, and never showed up to Thanksgiving dinner ever again. He did show up to a family wedding. All those guys came up to him asking for free medical advice. My family had duck wars once for Christmas. Thanksgiving isn't a thing here, but it was between my mom and my aunt on who can make my grandma's duck the best. We have duck instead of turkey. It's better. Fight me. Grandma used to make this absolutely amazing duck every Christmas until she died, and my aunt lived far. So mom got the original recipe and took to making it for us every year. And let me tell you, of the two, my mother got the cooking genes, not her sister. Goddamn, I hate when my aunt invites us over for lunch. Her cooking is scary, but she doesn't admit that. So one day she moved back into town, and we started celebrating Christmas together again. Then she moved into grandma's apartment again, after it was empty for years, so it made sense that Christmas be there. She decided to make the damn duck though. Mom had already said she'd make it. Hell, we buy the goddamn dead bird months in advance every year. But welp, she would throw a fit otherwise, and there was a degree of arguing and altercation. So in the end my mother gave her the recipe and off she went to cook her damn duck. Well, mom made duck anyway. 2 ducks is a lot of duck. 1 duck was enough for all of us. Everyone tried both ducks. Mom's was gone in the first round. My aunt's was the leftover no one wanted to take home. I'm getting old. I think should learn and master that recipe ASAP, because considering the rest of my generation in the family, this duck tradition is about to die a terrible death. My very conservative and kind in-laws drove 3 hours to have Thanksgiving dinner with my family the year my husband and I married. It was supposed to be the sweet new tradition melding our families and all that. My youngest sister and her boyfriend arrive a couple hours late, obviously high as hell, and proceed to eat a ton of food and then promptly pass out on the couch. My in-laws watched in abject horror a little bit later as the boyfriend came to slightly, flipped them both off, and then passed out again. In-laws haven't visited for holidays since.